Hello and welcome back to AWS On Air, the official live stream track here at AWS reInvent 2020. We are back again with a set of back-to-back interviews in the Voice of the Customer series, where I sit down and perform a series of interviews with some amazing guests, just like Amit here, talking about how customers are using AWS in innovative ways. Amit, we have so much to talk about, so little time, but I first wanted to say thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Nick. It's a pleasure to be here. Really excited to be speaking with you all.
Wonderful. Yeah. And, as the little name card says there on the screen, Amit Narayan, founder and CEO of AutoGrid Systems. Would you mind telling everyone in the audience a little bit about AutoGrid and the work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. AutoGrid is about 100 people strong company based in California. We provide our software as a service solutions to power and utility segment. We are one of the AWS advanced partners, have been working with you guys for close to 10 years now from the very inception. And our mission is to accelerate transition to sustainable energy. And all our customers are looking to deploy new energy solutions in the market.
Awesome. Very exciting. Also, a pleasure to get to sit down with someone in the AWS, APN network. So, 10 years, no short period of time. You are certainly the foremost expert in this room here amongst the two of us in power and utilities. So I've got a ton of questions that I'm interested in hearing answers to. First of which is, you talked about your mission to deliver sustainable energy to all of your customers, and you do that through some of the SaaS solutions that you offer. How do you go about achieving that mission in a SaaS fashion, right? Like how does AutoGrid's products and services for your customers help to deliver on that goal?
Yeah, so I mean, as you probably recognize, Nick, electricity system is probably one of the greatest engineering achievements of humanity. It has enabled all the progress that we have. And as we look forward, I personally believe that we need to double down on electricity. We have to electrify all the different uses of energy, including transportation. And while doing that, we have to decarbonize how energy is produced. So if you see what's happening in the market, there's literally trillions of dollars of investment that is coming in to build this new energy infrastructure, everything from renewables to batteries to EVs to smart appliances. And our role in this is to see how we can become the brain of this very complex network. So our software connects to all the different energy assets, whether they're in the homes or buildings or large-scale assets on the utility side, monitors these assets continuously, forecasts what the state of the system is going to be, optimizes and controls. And in an attempt to ensure that the system is running efficiently all the time while it is maximizing the investments, the returns on investments that our customers, the asset owners and operators are making. So today, we are working in approximately 12 countries. We have 50 customers. We work with both regulated utilities as well as new energy project developers and asset owners. And we are managing close to 5,000 megawatts of assets, which includes everything from a thermostat in a home to EV networks, to batteries, to solar and wind farms, both on the rooftop as well as at the utility scale. And we think that this journey is just getting started at this point.
Yeah, certainly so. This, as I hear this story, I'm so excited to see the future that this type of work is empowering. But one of the things as a software developer I started thinking about is, oh man, you mentioned a lot of different energy sources and the monitoring of appliances or physical hardware. There was a particular word that you used there, and building a system that can monitor in a generalizable way all of these different systems is certainly some sort of challenge, right? And let's say that's the status quo. With a move towards renewables, now you have all of these new technologies and new types of devices, for lack of a better word, that you'll have to be building integrations for, right? I can imagine this is an immense challenge. am I barking up the right tree here? What does this look like from your side of the story? What are the challenges that power and utilities companies in this move to renewable, this movement towards renewable energy? How have those challenges presented themselves to at least AutoGrid services?
Yeah, I mean, so it's a definitely a very complex, multidimensional problem. I think at the heart of it is the fact that sun doesn't shine all the time and wind doesn't blow all the time. So the intermittency of renewables and how to keep the system running very efficiently, very reliably, is the challenge as we start looking at very high penetration of these resources onto the electricity system. And what this means is that the system needs to become a lot more flexible. Instead of just relying on supply side resources, which in the past were a lot more dispatchable and controllable, the utilities now are looking to become more intelligent in optimizing everything that they have at their disposal. So whether it's generation or becoming more intelligent around how to control demand and load, it's part of the same equation, and we need to be able to balance both sides of this equation. Now, one of the other challenges that comes with this is the fact that a lot of these new energy assets are getting deployed on the customer side of the meter. So you're putting solar on your rooftop, you're buying electric cars, and the action has shifted from the utility domain to the customer domain, what we call behind the meter assets. So that opens up a whole set of challenges in terms of how do you engage with customers, how do you bring these assets into the utility domain, provide visibility and control, what kind of business models do you enable along with that. So again, this is where we come in. We simplify the life for our utility customers on one hand, allowing them to get a 360 view of their resources. And on the other hand, we also work with project developers and asset owners who need to interact with utilities to be able to maximize the return on their asset investment. And we sort of become a clearinghouse in the middle for data as well as for control signals to enable what I call a self-driving grid for our customers.
Yeah, no, it's certainly a lot of moving parts in what is really this end-to-end chain, right? At its most simple form, it's a utility provider and a consumer, but as you said, there's these transformational shifts, especially with renewables, with behind the meter appliances, with folks maybe driving energy from multiple sources. One thing that jumps out to me is with behind the meter. Folks with they may have their own batteries to temporarily store their own power, right? I'm sure this has been a monumental shift and has presented its own set of challenges. And AutoGrid seems, like you said, as a clearinghouse, positioned to try and facilitate that relationship and make that handoff, the monitoring, and we talk about right-sizing infrastructure all the time here at AWS. In a way, right-sizing power delivery and maintenance and load and all of those topics for both utility providers, but then the consumers, because no one likes having too much energy. You can have power surges, and then on the opposite side, obviously there are some obvious concerns if you don't have power when you need it. So some really interesting stuff, and that leads me into what I wanted to talk about next, which was the tech behind AutoGrid and how this becomes possible. You mentioned that you have a SaaS service. Surely this uses some AWS services under the hood. I'm going to sort of open the floor for however you want to take this. What is some of the tech that powers AutoGrid SaaS services, and do any of the AWS services come into play?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned in my introduction, we are heavy users of AWS. We are exclusively on AWS at this point. When we started the journey on the cloud 10 years ago, cloud was still not as widely accepted, especially in the energy sector, and we were one of the early sort of adopters of cloud, been evangelizing along with AWS on why it makes sense for a variety of reasons. So I mean, our engineers love AWS. The support from power and utilities team has been just phenomenal over the last few years since the team has been founded. Ralph, Rolf, Don, all of you have been just fantastic. So just a shout out to you if you're listening to this. We use AWS for first and foremost provide the scalability that our customers need. When you're talking about monitoring and optimizing millions of assets, it requires a lot of big data. Since these assets are owned by customers in many cases, you have multi-sided cost functions that you have to optimize. So that brings in AI. So we are very heavy users of AI to predict and optimize these systems. Of course, electricity is one of the most widespread networks, even more than computer networks. Our customers are spread all across the world, and being on AWS helps us support them. We are in 12 countries. We run 7 AWS zones, provides 24/7 reliability and uptime. And last but not the least, the security requirements in this industry, understandably so, are extreme, right? So this is critical infrastructure. There's a lot of cybersecurity concerns around keeping the lights on. Obviously, a lot of economic impact if the system goes down. So security has been a big issue and big concern. And I'm happy to say that working closely with AWS, we are the first ones in this domain on the cloud who has achieved the gold standard of security in utilities, which is called NERC CIP compliance. CIP stands for Critical Infrastructure Protection. And I think, as far as I know, we are the first ones who have been able to do that on a public cloud. So it's been a fantastic partnership. I'm looking forward to growing this and growing together. I mean, on the business side, we see a move to digital and cloud, and on the technology side, and on the business side, our customers are grappling with some big issues around how to manage their systems more effectively. So it's a really good partnership in that sense, from my perspective.
Certainly, a partnership of 10 years in the running and extending is certainly one that I would say is quite strong. But your pun before about helping customers keep the lights on is quite apt, right? It's exactly what you all work in. So that's fascinating. And one thing, there's a few things that jump out to me, and maybe I'm tooting your horn a bit here, but you know I think you mentioned before about 100 people on staff and 12 countries with extensive SLAs. You talk about security and some of these difficult challenges to solve, not just one time, but to do so in the many areas and geographies and regions that your business operates and that your customers exist in. I'd imagine I'm quite impressed. Such a small team can have such a large footprint. Is there any role in the cloud services that enable you to be agile, to sort of plan in one region and deploy into multiple? Like how has cloud changed the way that you develop your product and be able to serve your customers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, without cloud, this would simply not be possible. And today, I mean, especially in the environment that we are with pandemic and so on, we have only seen acceleration of our business. We are working in these countries. We don't need to have staff there. We can do everything remotely. So that's been not only a critical part of how we do our business. Increasingly, our customers are also recognizing that this is something that they need to accelerate and double down on. So that's been key. A lot of this is dependent on automation and extreme automation. And the reason I love reInvent, and I've been attending it for now a couple of years, is it helps us get exposed to the best practices from all the different industries, and we have to constantly bring those best practices around CI/CD and just infrastructure as a code type of a philosophy, so that we can keep our delivery footprint relatively small and yet scale and grow as our customers grow. So it's been, again, a really fantastic journey with you all.
Certainly so, and very glad to hear that you've been enjoying reInvent in years past. And in many ways, we hope that customers that are watching this session can learn a little bit about the journey that you've had and what AutoGrid has built and been able to do here on AWS. So thank you for helping to pass that knowledge forward to a lot of other customers that may be out there. But it sounds like things have been going quite well. Some great progress, regional expansion, a lean and agile team. When you're looking at what's next, obviously decarbonization and the move towards renewables is the future. Are there any advice that you can provide to other power and utilities customers, or anyone that may be interested in this space? Either technological trends or anything that AutoGrid may be doing moving forward here.
I mean, I think the utility business is undergoing a transformation, both on the technology front as well as on the business model side. And I think this is really an opportunity for them to reinvent their business model. For the last 100 years, the business has primarily around deploying capital and owning assets and earning a rate of return on these assets. Now, when we move to this new era of customer-owned assets, it will be a lot more around business models that derive value from optimizing the assets, whether these are existing assets that they own or these are new assets that their customers are deploying, and then understanding how they're going to take advantage of these assets to transform their own business. It requires just another level of collaboration. The role of consumers and suppliers is changing. The utilities used to buy electricity from a handful of generators, or they would own these generators in some cases, and then have a one-way transaction with their customers. Now this equation is completely flipping on its head. So they have to do millions of more transactions. These transactions are 24/7 as they buy and not just sell electricity to their consumers. So how do they do all of this? I mean, it really comes down to digital transformation, automation on their side, making sure that they are part of an ecosystem where not just the customers, but other project developers, asset owners, operators, and energy as a service players can all interact with each other, exchange data with each other. And really, it is a transformation which starts from the consumer and goes all the way to the control center, and every aspect of their business has to change. So I think a lot of utilities are in that mode, and I just think that they will have to accelerate it even further and think about both the business side of this equation as well as the technology.
Yeah, well put. Jeff Bezos typically likes to say, when we're thinking about business problems in the long term, you can think about the things that may change, but there are a few things that will never change. Customers will never want to, will never be upset about paying less or getting the most for their dollar, or having change or features deployed quicker. And it sounds like that's something that is quite salient to you and the rest of the team over at AutoGrid Systems. Now, I think we're at about time for our session here, Amit, unfortunately. It's been a real pleasure speaking to you about everything that AutoGrid is doing here on AWS. Again, Amit Narayan, founder and CEO of AutoGrid Systems. This has been our Voice of the Customer session. We will have more coming up in just a second, so stick around, and we will be right back.
Thank you.
Hello, I promised we'd be back in just a second, and here we are with our second of 3 Voice of the Customer sessions here at AWS On Air. Joining me now is Xiaozhen Huang from Cbros to talk a little bit about how Cbros and AWS are enabling a connected vehicle ecosystem with Cbros' deep connectivity platform. Xiaozhen, I have lots of questions. I'm sure we'll be able to get to most or all of them, but first of all, thank you so much for taking the time out today.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for your time as well.
Wonderful. Well, I figured I'd give you the floor to open things up, right? I have a little bit of a prompt here for the deep connectivity platform, and I'm interested to hear more. But broadly, what does Cbros work in, and what does your work entail there as VP of Software?
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, Cbros is a automotive technology and SaaS company. We provide secure, scalable, and reliable connectivities between the vehicle and the cloud. So we saw the trend of a software-defined vehicle, and we believe this is the future for the whole automotive industry. I would imagine, like at some point in the future, all the vehicles, all the cars, regardless of the gas-powered EV or self-driving cars, all of them will be dependent upon the cloud connectivity. So right now, the software component in the vehicle has been overlooked for decades, and Cbros solution has perfectly filled the gap here. So at a very high level, Cbros provide 2 key products at this moment. So one is the OTA updater for firmware update over the air, and the other one is the OTA logger for collecting live vehicle data and processing the cloud. So our solution works on every vehicle architecture, and we are helping our customer to enable the connectivity across that fleet and build a connected vehicle ecosystem. So that's pretty much what Cbros is doing at a very high level. And for me, I manage the software team at Cbros, and then we are doing the cloud side development to support our customers. Yeah.
Wonderful, extremely exciting. Separate, like you said, separate from the energy or the engines that would be powering our cars tomorrow. I think this proliferation of data and the desire to have data-driven features in cars is certainly exploded in recent years. And so just so I have an understanding, again, as the non-expert here in the automotive space, we see both over-the-air updates, that's OTA, the ability to push software updates to systems that exist on these vehicles. And then on the other side, we also have, let's say, a two-way communication or a collection of data on vehicles to then process some sort of through some sort of application that's on the cloud, correct?
Yep.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Now, I know there are certain car manufacturers, at least here in the United States, that have moved forward quite quickly with this. Maybe some of those have built their tech in-house, but it seems like Cbros is well positioned to be able to offer these services to a broad number of auto manufacturers. I think you mentioned that there's already some wide-reaching compatibility there. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Awesome. So powering the data in these systems that will be in our vehicles tomorrow. Great level setting. So let's dive a little bit deeper on that, right? I don't have a vehicle that does over-the-air updates yet, but I'm sure you spend all day working on this exact use case. So what are some common examples of how people like me and you, as drivers of vehicles, will be able to benefit from over-the-air updates? What features does this enable?
Yeah, that's a great question. So over-the-air update is an essential part of the software-defined vehicle. So it provides a lot of flexibility for the customers or OEMs to configure and tweak the vehicle remotely. So one concrete example is that for the vehicle recalls. So right now, it's a huge pain point for automakers to recall the vehicles and tweak the software or firmware. So where a lot of them could be easily done over the air. So having a robust OTA update solution could actually dramatically reduce the cost of recall for automakers and even make the life for car owner much easier. So in addition to that, OTA update also enable a lot of new use cases we haven't really thought about or wasn't possible in the past. So like predictive maintenance and remote diagnostic, even dynamically configure the vehicle based on the condition, like or weather of the current location. So that's for the OEMs. So for car makers, Cbros solution is also very relevant to our day-to-day life. So during COVID-19, since I don't drive that much, I choose to switch to a mileage-based car insurance. They require me to install a small dongle that connects to my ODB ports in the vehicle to track the usage. So as we know, there are very limited information that could be extracted from the ODB ports. With the Cbros debugger solution, not only could we collect the data like a harsh braking, harsh acceleration, so that a good driver could actually get a further discount for the insurance premium, we also can provide a comprehensive solution to send the compressed data based on the events to minimize the overall cost of the data transmission. So I think which is a huge cost source for a lot of OEMs. So overall, those are the two products that Cbros is currently offering. But our goal is not just to offer these two products. Our solutions start with unlocking the potential of software-defined vehicle. And our goal is to help our customer to build an end-to-end connectivity ecosystem, which includes things like best practice, backend integration, mobile app. So hopefully that answers your question regarding the example or use case that you're asking about.
Yeah, no, more than answered the the question. You know, I have so many ideas running through my head. You know, I'm a avid car fan, and you know, for folks that may be a little bit less familiar, you know, you mentioned the ODB port. This is a common data interface standard that when you go into either a car dealership or a mechanic and they want to diagnose your vehicle, they can plug a physical appliance into your car and essentially read that data directly from the vehicle. But again, that requires that physical device. People usually don't have those themselves. It's not wireless or you know, preemptively pushing that data. And so that's, you know, that's the first really big thing that comes across to me. It's that this data is now accessible to people in, you know, semi-real time or real time. And then second, you know, it really feels like Cbros is well positioned on this larger and broader shift to software in vehicles, which is, you know, when we buy a car and have in the past, we find that the software, for most intents and purposes, is kind of locked in to the quality at the day that we purchase it, right? You know, like exactly. A car ages, technology moves on, software gets prettier and maybe slicker to use. But oftentimes you're locked into that software that's available from the day that you purchased it. And, you know, even sending it into, you know, you go in for routine maintenance, it doesn't often get upgraded like the physical components of your hardware. And so this isn't, to me, just about over-the-air updates. This is also about vehicles operating and following some more common software trends, more frequent updates, you know, not purchasing software that exists as is until the end of the life cycle of that car. And so, you know, some very exciting stuff here. So you mentioned examples in how this data can be surfaced either to, you know, the manufacturers or OEMs or to insurance companies, what have you. What does it look like to have some sort of centralized view into this data? Because again, I imagine when you go into the mechanic, they've got it on a physical appliance, but with the advent of Cbros' technology and a connected data platform, I'd imagine you have some sort of web application or mobile app that makes this a very easy experience.
Yep. Yeah. So I believe like a picture is worth 1,000 words, and then a demo is probably worth 10,000 words. So I'm going to like give a small demo and quickly walk through our portal next.
Perfect. That sounds great.
Cool. So this is the overview of our landing page. So essentially, our customer can take a look at how many vehicles are running on the fleet, any error coming from the vehicle, and then also like the bytes in and out on the vehicle. So they can also dig deeper into like, for example, last 7 days, last 14 days to get more slice and dice of the data. And in addition to that, they can also get insight into the rollouts, get insight into the deployments. I'm not going to dive into detail, but this gives you an overview of the whole fleet insight into the fleet. And the second thing I'm going to show is the inventory, the package page. So in this page, our customer can manage or upload, download the package on the fleet. So for example, if I click into the package view, they can see how many versions are deploying how many vehicles. So this is a very holistic view about the entire fleet. So they can get a very quick insight into the package package distribution. And the second thing I want to do is like I want to start a rollout. But before I do that, I want to create a vehicle group. So the concept of vehicle group is a way to group the vehicle together based on some sort of attribute or metadata. So for example, I can create a vehicle group based on the make, year, color, geolocation of the vehicle. So right now I'm not going to create on a demo, but I already create one for the demo purpose here for demo group. And next I'm going to try to start a rollout for our fleets. So I already create a rollout here for demo, but in order to demonstrate it better, I want to walk through a little bit on how people will create new rollouts. So essentially, people can choose package they want to deploy and choose the version of package to deploy. and they can actually schedule a day in the future to deploy the package, choose the vehicle group we create in the past. And also for some of our customers, they like to pick different strategy to roll out a software package. For example, they want to roll out to 10% of the vehicle first, and then to a 90%. So ensure the safe rollout of the entire process. They can also pick and choose some safe mechanism to stop error happening in the entire fleet by clicking the button here and there. And also they can choose the delivery type, Wi-Fi, cellular. So we offer a variety of types for customer to pick to deliver the software package. So I'm not going to create the entire rollout for now, but I'm going to use our existing rollout to show the case here. So for example, for demo purpose, I can approve myself for the rollout, but in the production, someone else need to approve my rollouts. But I can start the rollout quickly, and you can see on this page, we have start rollout to 10 vehicles on the fleet. And then some of them will be having different status. Some are in progress, some is pending, some is downloading. And our customer can even click into each one and then see the detailed breakdown, what stage of the update in real time coming from the vehicle. And as you can see, they are waiting for the update staging. They may wait for the pending for precondition very soon, and then start upgrading process. So since this will take a while, so I'm not going to wait until the whole process finish. But as you can see, we can do the parallel upgrade of the ECUs on the vehicle. And then in the meantime, the whole upgrade process adopt a security framework called Optane to ensure the end-to-end security of the vehicle upgrade. Because vehicle upgrade security is definitely one of the most important topic of the entire OTA solution. And a lot of our customers care a lot about the OTA upgrade. And in the process, you can also see the data, the log coming from the vehicle in real time. And everything here is configurable. So I will leave this upgrade to go for a while, but I'm going to jump to a next product. I'm going to show here is the deep logger solution. So essentially, what I'm showing here is the overview or the data we collect from the vehicle in the real time. As you can see, the data is changing right now, and there are some data coming from the vehicle as well. But as you can see, there are some data is missing at this moment, like the BMS related data are all missing at this moment. The beauty of our solution is that we can actually change configure the data transmission without actually deploying a firmware upgrade. So for example, I'm going to configure the data transmission by adding a couple messages, for example, like a BMS status, sales status, and click update. So in a very short period of time, I'm going to see some data coming from this vehicle. So as you can see, we start showing the state of charge. We start showing the charge graph. So everything here is customizable. So our customer can actually easily move things around, slice and dice, resize, and then configure the signal of each graph on the entire portal. So let's pretty much about very quick walkthrough of the entire the product in a 10,000 piece level. So hopefully this will give a bit insight into what we are doing right now.
Oh, 100%. This is, I love me a good demo, and that certainly was one. And a testament to how easy it was to follow, a super slick interface here. I feel well equipped to have all of this data at my fingertips for what I would want. Now, I'm gonna ask us to pull the covers back a little bit here. It's clear how a user uses Cebros and all of that. But when I'm thinking about the moving parts here, no pun intended, we have end devices or like edge devices here that are supplying data and receiving data in the form of these vehicles. We have centralized dashboards. You may have different deployments for multiple regions, hypothetically, right? What is some of the tech, and if so, any call outs to AWS services that make all of this possible, or that your team allows your team to focus on building this really slick experience for your customers?
Yeah, so our primary stack on AWS is made up of like Golang, React.js, and then React Native. So this is the language we're using to develop our whole system. We choose those based on a trade-off among developer velocity, high concurrency workload, and cross-platform support. So we heavily leverage AWS IoT Core for the vehicle and cloud communication. So after we get a message from the vehicle, we store in AWS S3 for the backup purpose and put them in Kinesis for the streaming processing. So Lambda and our backend service are deployed in EKS. So they will process those messages in the real time and store them in the various storage backend like RDS, DynamoDB, and those data could be further processed using machine learning module. We leverage from AWS as well. So that's a lot of component actually we're trying to use from AWS right now. Finally, we also work closely with solution architect from AWS. I know this is not a typical specific component from AWS, but I think this is a very helpful session. So solution architect from AWS, they are really helpful and provide great insight into the AWS platform. And then also, for example, how to estimate and leverage AWS efficiently. They have great insight into how things work there. We engage them in a various technical and non-technical topic in order to deliver a very cost-efficient and scalable solution to our customers. So that's pretty much how we leverage AWS on a very high level. And to your question, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's it's always great to see such a wide breadth of features being used, and I imagine that went into your choice of a cloud platform, right? From playing back what I heard here, EKS for service deployment, IoT Core, S3 for storing your data, technical expertise from solutions architects. All of these things sort of come together on one platform in AWS. And something that I will never stop talking about is developer velocity. One of the most important things when it comes to speed of shipping features is how equipped your developers are at using a particular set of technology, right? Something could be more performant in production, but if it delays getting that feature out, that could be a big problem. Has AWS really offered you this breadth that enables you to just focus on doing what you want to do and delivering those features?
Yeah, for sure, definitely. So there's a lot of pain point I can imagine from startup perspective when facing this kind of big challenge, especially talking about handling millions of vehicles at the same time. So I came from the infrastructure background of Uber and Facebook, where the entire infrastructure was pretty much built on-prem. So I know how difficult or how hard it is to start everything from scratch and make it a scalable and reliable solution. So I couldn't imagine how much time it would take for Zebros to build everything from scratch and scale to millions of vehicles. So one concrete example, as I mentioned in the previous discussion, is the IoT Core. To build MQTT gateway itself is already a pretty huge infrastructure task. It will probably take like a long time for Zebros to even maintain and scale to millions of vehicles all at the same time. So same thing for pretty much all the components you mentioned, like EKS, DynamoDB, S3. Those things will take a long time for people to build. So as a startup, we definitely don't have resource and time to build everything from ground up, let alone maintaining them operationally, which is going to be a large pain point if we choose that path. So that's a challenge what Zebros is facing. I would imagine those are the same challenges that most startups will be facing as well. And AWS is a great platform that offer a lot of products for us to actually build on top of. Yeah.
Wonderful. A great story, a great product. Again, in just a few minutes, you were able to walk me through it, and it was super slick. Again, we largely got to see the UI and the UX, but with all of the with all of the underpinnings that you saw there in the logs with the data and all of the I'd say some of the hairiest bits are managing those MQTT gateways exactly. and all of the hard parts of doing your business, actually communicating with the end devices, just sort of being abstracted away. And that's the work your team gets to make easier for your customers. So Xiaozhen, thank you so much for joining me. A few call outs here at the tail end of the session. I believe Zebros is, you can find them at the AWS APN Partner Solutions directory. So that's available there as well. You have a site as well. That's zebros.tech, I believe.
Yep. Zebros.tech.
Wonderful. And for anyone else who might be in the automotive space looking to implement solutions built on AWS or leverage some of these best practices, you can find more information over at aws.amazon.com/automotive. Well, Xiaozhen, we are at time here. Unfortunately, I would love to dive even deeper into the service. This, again, can't speak enough to how slick the web app looked there. But again, Xiaozhen Huang, VP of Software over at Zebros Automotive, closing out the automotive voice of the customer session here. When we return, we will be back with our third of the day. Thank you again. Stick around and we will be right back.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back here at AWS On Air. Again, the official live streaming track at reInvent 2020. Here I am joined for yet another Voice of the Customer session, this time with a very special guest from the Canadian Institute of Health Information. Ron Huckster joining me is the Vice President and Chief Information Officer over at the Canadian Institute of Health, CIHI. Ron, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, I am super interested to see what KaiHai is that the how I pronounce the acronym?
Yeah, it's a much easier way. Kai is
Awesome.
fine.
So yeah, KaiHai has, to the best of my understanding, performed a transformation journey into the cloud, and there is no two stories are the same here. So I'm very interested to see how that turned out for all of you. But as the vice president and chief information officer, I'm sure you've had a very close relationship with this migration and with this journey itself. Why don't you tell us a little bit about KaiHai, what you all do, and then we can dive deeper on that migration itself.
Yeah, the background will help us understand why we had to go to the cloud for a bunch of obvious reasons. But KaiHai is a pan-Canadian not-for-profit organization. We produce analysis, comparable data, and action data on how the healthcare system is performing in Canada. So we go from the right coast to the left coast, from the south to the north. We get the information from all the various jurisdictions, put them together, and we put the analysis together to find out how the healthcare system is performing, where it can be looked at to be improved, and then comparable for the jurisdictions to base their policies and their healthcare programs on. So it's really a really interesting mix of massive data collection, really sophisticated analysis and advanced computing, and then a whole publishing arm about how we distribute the data to the stakeholders and what's available on our public website. So it was really, really important to try and take advantage of the cloud because it gives us the ability to remove any IT lags in the production and the collection of data and the production of the reports, right? We really need to have the ability to acquire the infrastructure quickly, to deploy our solutions quickly. We really need to be able to test and play with new AI, with new machine learning stuff, without having to buy an entire data center and then strand it once we're finished the project. So it's led us to an ability to do a ton of piloting and figuring things out on the cheap. And it also gives us the ability that when we actually need to burst for data capacity, for storage, for acquisition of stuff, we can do that in the cloud instantly. So it was really all those kind of business enablers that the cloud provides us was the real reason for going there. Now, getting there was a bit of a fun trip. There are some secret recipes and sauces we kind of figured out along the way, and that's what we'd like to share with people because in the healthcare sector, which is what we're trying to help out with this transition, it can be a real game changer if we can get the entire sector kind of leaning into the cloud technologies.
Certainly so. And, after hearing that response, my initial reaction is, where can we even begin? There's so much to talk about here. I know we have about 20 minutes, but we'll try our best to make good use of the time. I've spoken to quite a few other customers here, and at organizations, we find that this term data siloing is often a challenge, right? The data may live in certain parts of an infrastructure that other organizations at the company may want to access. But with my naive understanding here, if we're talking about the entirety of the breadth of the healthcare system and data that you deal with at KaiHai, this may not just simply be infrastructure silos. This is geographic silos, right? This data may live on premises on local devices that you could be tasked with trying to aggregate for reporting. And prior to cloud, that seems like that could be a really monumental undertaking.
Yes, it's further complicated or enhanced by our extreme observance of our data sharing agreements, right? So we're talking about healthcare information, the most personal, most privacy sensitive type of information around. So we have really ironclad data sharing agreements with all of our stakeholders. And job number one is to protect that and to however we can manage the better use of the data to respect those and to work with our stakeholders in that. So that's the first job. That explains a few decisions we made about going to the cloud coming up. But you're right. CaiHi is celebrating its 25th year last year. So we are now, a mature-ish organization. We collected massive amounts of pan-Canadian data sets. So there's roughly 28 or 30 pan-Canadian data sets that have been collected from programmatic perspectives and usually stored in relational type databases, right? So moving to the cloud not only gives us the ability to be flexible on the infrastructure, now we can start talking about data lakes. We can start talking about how you actually collect the data and store it so that it's not set up in a already a pre-biased relational model, and it's actually there for a data lake for cross purposes. Because as CaiHi has matured, its advanced analytics capability has moved into not only looking at indicators or looking at specific themes like opioids or hospital harm or suicides. It's now a population-based thing where you have to integrate a ton of data. So the integration of that data, which allows you to look at a population of people, seniors or youth or whatever the case may be, it's imperative that we actually get those cloud features set up and we get all our data kind of freed from the silos, put into the lakes, and then be able to be integrated, and then launch the AI and machine learning folks on top of it, right? So like I say, the big reason at the start was to give us the ability to not have technology prevent us from doing pilots, prevent us from scaling up when we needed to, and prevent us from not being able to access the data in an integrated way. So, and then you can get really sophisticated with all the new tools that are available in the cloud. All the analytics, the research pieces. I mean, I saw on your resume R and Python, like we're just starting to move into those whole new areas because it's freed us up from the data centers on premise.
Oh, certainly. And, you say that with a smile on your face. I know it's always, it always feels better to move to something that you're doing because you want to do it, or, you're exploring new horizons than feeling locked down to, tasks of maintenance on some of your own infrastructure. But, what I'm really hearing here is you sort of have this hierarchy of needs, right? The first of which is, making sure the technology is not actively prohibiting you. You want to be able to store your data and do so in a way that, you have the storage space, you have the ability to scale up and down there. You have the latency that that you're satisfied with, and then you make that open and accessible. You mentioned data lakes, opening data up to multiple arms of the organization, such that you're not either duplicating it or having people denied access to it. And then down the line, sort of in full actualization, is these things that you mentioned, like insights, right? We have through aggregation, or CaiHi has through aggregation of this data in the data lake, enables you to experiment, perform, dabble with machine learning and AI to be able to now have some new features that could exist that otherwise would not have been possible. And we'll get into that in just a bit. But you mentioned that the journey to cloud, it obviously doesn't happen overnight. You've been on AWS for a little bit now. I don't remember. I think you said it was a few months or maybe a year or so. That journey does not happen overnight. I can't restate that enough. How has that journey been thus far from, day one of moving from on premises to where you're at now?
Yeah, so it's been fascinating actually. We started with a strategy, a cloud strategy. We had to figure out the direction and the vision and the mission and get people kind of all pointed in the same vector direction. We used a third party to do that, and we actually came up with a bifurcated strategy. So we took all of our office automation and we outsourced that to a software as a service. We took all of our business applications and data and moved it, or planned to move it, into an AWS environment, right? So the most important thing from a CaiHi perspective was when we were changing the infrastructure, when we were moving the data, we had to be respectful of those data sharing agreements and our commitments to our security and privacy programs. Like that is number one job inside of CaiHi as far as technology goes, right? So in order to do that, we had to make a decision. And so this is kind of the recipe we used to move into the cloud. The first decision was to use our internal staff to move to the cloud. That meant that we were going to take a little longer, have a few bruised knuckles and a few bruised elbows and kneecaps and feet. But in the end, our staff would be the knowledgeable folks to operate it in the cloud going forward. It also allowed us to select the infrastructure as a service mode of AWS. Our information security and our security and privacy risk programs all translated into the cloud. So we controlled those. We kept that policy, we kept the operations, we kept the monitoring and the break fix all within inside staff. So that was the very first important decision, was to do this as infrastructure as service with existing staff. So the journey took a little bit longer than it could have if we had hired guns to come in and like deploy in the cloud in 6 months and walk away. But we couldn't do that because of our situation in the healthcare sector, right? Now, the other interesting piece is the money. People are often afraid of spending too much money when they move into the cloud, or it's very expensive and stuff like that. So we set up a really kind of cool way of doing a comparison through a total cost of ownership of our on-prem and at the various stages as we moved into the cloud. So our new cloud business office, which is another thing we use, which was to manage all of the contractual arrangements and the use of AWS through a cloud business office, is based on an annual TCO. So we wanted to make sure we didn't have runaway costs because people were doing things that were not managed properly or not aligned properly. So we created what we call a Cloud Center of Excellence, which is really an architecture review board, so that everything that was being built and deployed in the cloud was being done according to one enterprise architecture. So there's a couple of things that were really dynamic tensions in the whole system move, but it made sure we got into the cloud at the same or less dollars as our TCO for our on-premise data center. We got into the cloud with the exact same or better enhanced security profile than we had before. And as a piece of shameless self-promotion, we just had an ISO 27001 recertification about a month after we went into the cloud. So that was pretty cool. And then going forward, all of the technologies are going to be leveraged in all the new application builds through that Cloud Center of Excellence. So we decided, in order to make this happen, we had to do it rather quickly. So we picked a lift and shift approach. So we just basically lift everything and shift it into the cloud. Now, a lot of companies may be looking at the option of getting their applications and stuff cloud ready, which is just a whole bunch of work. But what you do in that case is you also have to keep the old applications running. So we moved everything into the cloud, and now we are optimizing everything that we have, because it's a lot easier to fix things and to migrate things and to optimize stuff in the cloud, right? So we've made a huge advancement in the technology practices, our infrastructure, and we're reaping a whole bunch of unexpected benefits. So one of the big unexpected benefits was our disaster recovery. Right, so our on-prem data centers required a full business continuity planning and disaster recovering piece. That's a button right now.
Yeah.
It's evidenced by the fact that when COVID-19 hit, Kai-Hai went from its locations across Canada, 4 of them, to work from home in 4 days.
Wow, that's.
And we actually moved to the cloud during COVID. So June was a really important month of this year, because that's when we actually moved. It was just kind of like telling David, our CEO, this is a geek's dream to actually move 2 data centers into the cloud with nobody in the office.
Yeah, no, that is, when I hear this story, this is a cloud migration done right. We heard in Andy Jassy's keynote in week 1, his 8 tips to being immensely successful as a company in not just these times, but how the challenge of companies being successful for such a long point in time. And a lot of the 8 points that he mentioned are represented right here in this story that you talked to. I mean, what I'm seeing is a top-down strategic buy-in to identification and assessment of TCO. Again, TCO for an entire organization's infrastructure is rarely something that can be effectively decided spontaneously by boots on the ground software engineers, right? So that top-down leadership and unified front is extremely important. But what we also saw was you didn't neglect the reality of the cost of learning, right? a lot of folks think, like, yeah, it's, switching technology is just as simple as, flipping a switch in certain scenarios. And, while for, failover or multiple disaster recovery scenarios in AWS, it can be a switch. The reality is you're learning some new picks and shovels to be able to do the job. And so, giving the affordances and investing in the people that will be your builders, to be able to effectively utilize that architecture and giving them the time. Again, looking at the time horizon of a year for your TCO. Andy talked a bit about not being short-sighted here at AWS and not going quarter by quarter, right? An institution as broad sweeping as Kai and for the type of work that you do, thinking for the long term is not really a reasonable option. It's a necessity. So being able to see that as well is quite enlightening. And then lastly, one thing that I heard that paralyzes a lot of organizations is how to start the migration. You have top down buy-in. Maybe your builders are excited and they're ready to innovate. But a lot of companies that I have seen get trapped in this desire to sort of have the entire migration architected out and not to deploy any infrastructure until they have their monolith completely decoupled into microservices and all of that. And I don't think that's the way to do it. You talked about some of the challenges of keeping some of the old systems running while trying to lift and shift, but I still think that is the right approach, right? Lifting and shifting to the cloud, you mentioned there are so many benefits of being able to optimize there. You get a lot of the affordances in monitoring and cost tagging and more deeply understanding the applications you've already written, and then you can break them down and prioritize based on whether you want to improve latency or what saves you the most money the quickest, right? So I know I'm gushing and summarizing the story you just told me, but I think this is really a playbook for a lot of companies that are looking to move to cloud. Nonetheless, ones in the healthcare space where, like you said, data compliance and security is we say it's priority 0 here at AWS, but it sounds like it is exactly as high of a priority over in your space.
Yeah, so it's the point you made around the staff and the learning is really, really, really special too. We kind of adopted our approach to reinforce that. So we did decide to use internal staff. We decided to take a little bit more of a painful approach. A lot of training. So AWS has a significant amount of training opportunities and all kinds of people to learn from. But we also trained the migration through our environments, right? So we did not move everything in one day. We took our time and we architected an AWS landing zone. And then we moved our development environment. And then we made mistakes and we fixed it up. But it wasn't a business critical thing because it was a development environment. Then we moved on to the UAT environments in the pre-prod. So we went environment by environment, learning all the way. So when we did to do the production cutover, it basically was a switch. But it was a lot of learnings through the other ones. So it depends how you stage the project, and you stage and you allow for the mistakes, you allow for the fail fast, you allow for the learnings, right? Because book learning, CBT learning, all that kind of stuff is okay, but really doing it and learning from the mistakes is really important.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, those mistakes, they oftentimes say that when you really learn is when you make those mistakes, or when you're frustrated, you aren't, necessarily getting it right on the first try. And to your point, identifying that expertise was valuable in-house for the long term and giving your employees their own way to do that is critical, right? This isn't just about getting the deployed application out the door as soon as possible in terms of, maybe having a SaaS provider or an ISV do that on your behalf, really understanding, no, we want to own, operate, and optimize this for the long haul, is really long-term thinking. And it's something that's really commendable. And again, we at AWS here try our best to offer a variety of resources to help train in an ongoing manner. I mean, in a way, even this is part of it, right? You shouldn't reinvent the wheel when it comes to your infrastructure, but wherever possible, we don't want to see customers going through the same challenges or roadblocks that other customers may have gone through. And so being able to hear stories just like this helps to enable all of the customers that may be performing migrations down the line that could look similar to Kai-Hi's.
Yeah, well, no, we're like I say, we're more than happy to share our experiences because it's been a really good experience for everybody. I think looking back, there's a lot of people convinced now that they can do almost anything now, right? So we're getting ready for the next wave, Richard, which is full optimization, full use of AI equipment, like full use of a whole bunch of stuff that we only thought was, not possible a short while ago. So the other piece I want before we go is moving to the cloud isn't the end of the journey. Moving to the cloud is meaning you can have your infrastructure and you can have your new technology, but it doesn't mean that you're not going to stop learning and optimizing, right? So our TCO and our cloud business office approach was to get into the cloud for the same or less to keep our financial accountants and controllers happy, because we weren't spending any more money than we were before. But now we're looking to cut those costs by 10, 20, 30, 40, 50% as we learn how to do more and better things in the cloud. So there's an equal amount of time after we get there to optimize stuff. Things as simple as putting all your applications in the same server type so you can shut them down overnight when you don't need them, right? You're talking about like a proper application portfolio management and investment piece. You have to know what applications you need on a 24/7 basis, or do you need them once a week or once a year? Like we have 10 applications we use twice a year around the fiscal cycle. They're now sitting on a shelf somewhere until we need them. They're costing us nothing. Before, they were costing us heat, space, security, everything going in the data premise. So there's a whole way of running the business differently that fundamentally changes how you operate IT, right? And it is kind of cool. And the coolness factor is what's gotten everybody kind of on board.
Well, I certainly agree, but it's always great to hear it from a customer. So Ron, thank you so much. I think we're at about time here, but in just these past 20 minutes, I've learned so much about KaiHai, the work that you've done, your migration to the cloud, and it really feels like the sky's the limit going forward. Again, spending less time on some of the IT and maintenance of applications and infrastructure, and on some of the more exciting bits, like being able to cut the cost of your existing applications and blaze some new trails with AI and machine learning and accessing the value that may have been locked away in some of the data that you've already had access to. So again, a very exciting story. This is the end of the Voice of the Customer session here with the Canadian Institute of Health Information. Again, joining me here, my esteemed guest, Ron Huckster, Vice President and Chief Information Officer at KaiHai. Ron, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
Wonderful. Well, we have more programming coming up here on AWS On Air, so stay tuned and we will be right back. See you soon, everyone.